What is going on? Jordan Sherwood, Wood on 1063 on Twitter, FatJackSports.com for my MMA picks as we get you set for the final card of Fight Island in Abu Dhabi. Unless, they have to move it, which Dana White has said he wants to take up residence in Abu Dhabi. But nonetheless, outstanding middleweight fight. Headlines a 15-fight card for UFC Fight Island 3. We have 7 selections in total at FatJackSports.com. We originally had Edward R. Rooney 9 times, but subtracted that down to 7 as the weigh-ins took place earlier on today. Main event, though, as I mentioned, Robert Whittaker, Darren Till, near pick'em fight. Critical fight in the middleweight division. Certainly the winner of this fight is going to position themselves to challenge the winner of Israel Adesanya and Paulo Costa later on this year. Should be an absolute war. Two guys that are knockout artists. I think that Robert Whittaker certainly has a little bit more tools in the tool shed if he relies back on his wrestling. When you're handicapping this fight, you have to decide if at 29 years of age, the wars that Robert Whittaker has gone through with Yoel Romero, the way that he was stopped by Israel Adesanya. He's been dropped 4 times in his last 2 fights, including the knockout loss to Israel Adesanya. It's a little bit too much for Robert Whittaker to handle. This is a guy that also has had a multitude of injuries, and certainly his career has been, somewhat cut short. But he's got a better resume than Darren Till, at least in the middleweight division, and certainly more experience at 185 pounds. I said this on VSiN earlier on in the week. I'm on Robert Whittaker to win the fight. I'm also on the under. I don't think that this fight goes to the judges' scorecards. I do think the footwork is going to cause some issues for Darren Till. It did in the Jorge Masvidal fight. If you remember how Masvidal was able to transition and knock out Darren Till, it's the similar footwork that Robert Whittaker possesses when he goes inside the pocket and looks for the overhand left or counter right. And we expect the same. He also might rely back on his wrestling. And, Darren Till is definitely going to be a tough guy to take down. And how good is Darren Till? He lost 2 fights in a row at welterweight, finishes at the hands of the aforementioned Jorge Masvidal and Tyron Woodley. Then he moves up in middleweight and looks okay in a split decision victory over Calvin Gastelum. But Calvin Gastelum, even though he looked horrendous last week against Jack Hermanson, still one of the best fighters at 185 pounds. Till was able to work him to the fence, utilize his strength in the clinch and get the win. But I'm picking Robert Whittaker to win the fight, and I'm also on the under. I think there is a finish, somewhat also believing that we might see a questionable chin in Robert Whittaker. Co-main event, the 2 guys, Shogun and Nogueira, combined 84 years of age. But yet we're seeing this fight for the 3rd time. Now, I will say this. The winner of this fight is one of our selections at FatJackSports.com, so you'll have to go there. I originally was leaning under in this fight. I'm not anymore after looking at the weigh-ins and kind of looking at a little bit more analytics. Last time that these 2 guys fought, it did go to decision. Mauricio Shogun Rua, though I'm excited to hear techno music, is not the blitzkrieg that he once was. I think these guys are going to be cautious. They're going to be a little bit tentative, even though vast amounts of experience between the 2 of them. This is why I'm now leaning the over. Be interested to see who retires from this fight. I think Nogueira definitely retires. He announced this is the final fight of his UFC contract. He's 44 years of age. Really not nothing else for him to do. And we'll see if Shogun retires too, see how he performs, because he's been, a somewhat 500 fighter since 2011. 7-7-1, split draw with Paul Craig his last time out, but a TKO of Tyson Pedro is a decent light heavyweight and still some pretty good Muay Thai for him. The other big fight, Alexander Gustafsson and Fabricio Verdum. Gustafsson weighed in at 244 pounds, so he's, carrying a lot more extra weight than he normally would at light heavyweight, still 35 years of age. The striking is going to be an issue for Fabricio Verdum. Verdum was getting tagged, absolutely battered against Alexei Oleinik. And I love the boa constrictor. He's not a striker. He's not a boxer. He's a grappler. And Verdum was just eating shots left and right. He can't do that against Alexander Gustafsson, who, won't have as a decisive, height and reach advantage like he does at light heavyweight against Verdum, but he's going to tee up Verdum. He's a much better striker than Oleinik, and if Verdum is not, safeguarding himself in the final fight of his deal. Now, this is it for the UFC. He hasn't hit the retirement yet. We might see Verdum in Bellator, but I think it's a finish. I think it's a finish either for Gustafsson or if this fight goes to the ground, major issues for Alexander Gustafsson because Fabricio Verdum is still a very well-versed fighter on the ground. We were all over Jade Herbert, the guy making his UFC debut, the Cage Warriors champion against Francisco Trinaldo. Trinaldo, despite winning 2 fights in a row at 41 years of age, we thought the length, the Muay Thai, and definitely the submissions off of his back, as well as the cardio, were going to cause some issues potentially for Francisco Trinaldo. We're now off this card, even though Trinaldo misses weight badly, 160 pounds for him, 5 pounds he misses, or 4 pounds he misses the lightweight limit. We're off that fight. I am recommending a play on Herbert, but it's not part of our selections at FatJackSports.com. The other guy I'm really interested real quick because I know we're up against it, Tom Aspinall, heavyweight prospect out of Europe. This guy is a knockout artist, good credentialed wrestler as well, good submissions off of his back. We expect him to roll through Jake Collier. Just gave you one for free there if you've watched the video up to this point. That's actually one of our selections at FatJackSports.com. We've got to play on that fight. We just said it. It's Aspinall. We also got to play on the round total as well. So a big heavyweight debut for him against a former middleweight, Jake Collier. That's actually going to weigh more than Tom Aspinall. Pretty interesting stuff. 15 fights in total. We've got 7 selections for you to play at FatJackSports.com. Go there. Follow my handle, Wood, on 1063. PM me if you have some questions about some fights that you're looking at. And most importantly, as I say, watch the fights.